This video is sponsored by Full Moon Features. If you love horror collectibles, make sure to check out Full Moon's Tiny Terrors. Stick around for more information at the end of the video, or go to the website in the link below. Good evening, campers, streamers, and babysitters, and yes, we are deep into Fantastic Fest, talking about another film which I'm sure none of you have heard about, but if you have, then you are probably very much deep into foreign cinema, because this was one I didn't even know about until we got into the festival. Luke, had you heard anything about The Uncle?
No. I think we're kind of getting this onslaught of a lot of films that I hadn't heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just a lot of unique, different stuff, especially these foreign films here. I think, I don't know what this one's going to look like when it does roll out to a bigger audience, but I honestly, I do feel like this one here is going to be a talking point with a lot of people. It's probably going to be like, have you seen The Uncle? It's the vibe I'm getting here.
Yeah, so just to kind of get into it here, I think that this is going to be a very divided review. We haven't talked about it. We're trying to stay away from talking about these until we get on camera, for the most part. And, I think I'm going to let you take it first because you seem to have really enjoyed this movie.
I did. I thought it was really well done. Looking at it, I think you run into this concept of you don't really know what's going on, and you'll probably read a little synopsis of this going into it, but it does deal with Christmas and this family kind of celebrating Christmas and Christmas Eve with the uncle that comes every year without spoiling anything, but and it's this weird dynamic that the entire family has, and as you go on you start learning more things. But I think for me, sitting with this film not really knowing too much what it's about, it kept me intrigued because it was one of those, from a writing perspective, it gives you just enough to keep asking questions, and you want to know a little bit more and a little bit more, and they don't show their cards at the very beginning. So you're wondering what exactly is going on. Again, they just give you those little tidbits and just enough. And then for me, by the end of it, you're like, what the hell's going on here? It's a wild ride for me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a wild ride. I gotta say, this is a movie that after sitting with it, after watching it and consuming it, taking it all in, I gotta say, I don't know if this is really for me, which I think is a bit strange because I saw a little Twitter convo between you and someone that you were talking with on there. You guys compared this, or at least they compared this to early Yorgos Lanthimos, and I see it. I do. I just don't know what it was. Maybe it's just the time and place that I'm in right now, but I think that this is a compliment to the film, but I was deeply unsettled from start to finish with this. I didn't really know how to take it. I didn't really enjoy my time with it, but I believe that's the intent. So, I mean, like, I can give this high marks on that field, but like for me, this was definitely something that I really wanted this to be over about 40 minutes into it, where I was just sitting here saying, like, this is just, I'm vastly uncomfortable with what I'm watching. I'm not getting many answers. It is a slow burn, and you really got to commit to take this journey. And for some, I think that's going to be real easy. They're going to be so caught up into it, but I just don't know. I just think that this movie, on a very different level, I would compare this to a Serbian film and how I watched that. Just deeply unsettled, not as gross or out as in your face as a Serbian film is with that, but this was very emotionally and very psychologically draining to me, and it was tough. It was a tough watch.
I do want to mention that maybe as people are watching this review, and if you've seen a Serbian film, I think maybe that is not a great comparison because of
not
people.
necessarily. Yeah, and I get what you're saying. I just want to clarify, it's not that it's like the content is that, It is just how I felt after watching
No,
it.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify that you're not going into something like a Serbian film. I
Mm-mm.
have not seen it. I know of it in certain instances, and that's not this. And I think this does strike a chord with people. I think you get to that raw nerve here with the uncle. That I think especially I think there is a knack here for foreign films that I think they dive deeper into psychological aspects of just human beings in general, where sometimes I think American film does miss that mark. And like
Hmm.
watching this film, you're really engulfed in that kind of that society, that feeling there, where you're constantly been being bombarded with kind of it's almost like having a raw nerve in your tooth and something keeps hitting it and you're just going back and forth. And I think you have to be prepared for that. And um that's where I think this film does excel because it does make you uncomfortable. And for me, I think I enjoy that uncomfortability because I think so many other films try to get there and they never really hit that mark. But the situations here, and I think this is really intriguing in terms of setting it on Christmas and having these kind of uncomfortable situations, I think even amplifies it a little bit more because we can all resonate with Christmas morning or Christmas Eve and spending time with that family. And especially when you understand the dynamic here that's present. And the muted performances here, where nothing's overly exaggerated, I think, but it is that conversational performance where as you're understanding the relationships and the dynamics of all of these people and trying to put yourself in the headspace with a lot of these people and understanding the stakes, I think that's something that is going to unnerve you in a sense. And, I think it's going to be difficult to shake all the way up until the very end. And I think it is going to leave a lot of people in awe. And I think you're going to be wrestling with those emotions here. And I think that for me, absolutely is the intention of the filmmaker. And I think that's why this is such a big positive for me is a lot of films, especially a lot of things that we've seen over the past year in the theater. They don't really get there. And,
Hmm.
things like Barbarian and things like The Black Phone, all great films, but for me, they don't get there for the most part. And I think The Uncle does.
Yeah, and I'm totally trying not to. It's a tough review for me, honestly, because it's like on one hand I respect it and I get what it was going for. I just think that for me at this moment in time, I don't know. This movie was just something that, again, just unsettled me and was just something that was just tough for me to get through, and tough for me to really even say that I enjoyed. And again, I don't want that to sit there as like a bad mark on the film because it is beautifully shot. I love the editing. The performances are all very, again, emotional and deep and unsettling, and it all works in the path that it's trying to service here. And so it's just one of those things where I think, as far as films I've seen this year, this is one that it would necessarily not be one of those traditional like jump scares or this scared me. This is one that, again, psychologically, it got me a little bit. It got me a little bit uneasy, especially in certain moments towards the third act. Just like trying to understand fully what the dynamics are, and I think that there's a good bit of this that comes from you really waiting for the kind of the hat to drop in this film and trying to get the full picture of what is going on. And I guess, unfortunately, this might be a spoiler. So I mean, go ahead and skip just a minute here if you need to, but it never does. It really holds you in that suspense of just drip feeding you information, and the picture is never fully clear. And I think that that genuinely plays into why this film, at the end of it, just left me a bit wrecked. I guess a bit more like, holy shit, like that was tough. That was a rough watch. Definitely one that will not be in my Christmas rotation.
Yeah, and like looking at the film, um, I feel like that kind of unnerving, like I said, is the intention of the filmmaker. And being able to sit with a film like that, and I think, especially when we go into the theater and you're sitting there for an hour and a half and you're like, well, that was a good film, and then you move on with your daily life. And this one, I think The Uncle is a film that you have to sit with. not necessarily reflect upon, but it's something that I think, you're just going to sit there and contemplate what you had just seen. And I think that goes with the performances. I think that goes with the writing. And I just think that goes with the aesthetic in general, because this is something, um, with the director kind of placing these kind of vibrant, almost throwback feelings of, the setting in a sense. And then kind of, and I don't even necessarily want to say complete viciousness, because this isn't like a torture film. This isn't very graphic in that sense. This is very much a psychological, in your head, understanding these relationships and these dynamics. And this is really a film that does amplify those stakes. And I think this kind of, for me at least, meshed well, because all those moving parts, and you get a variation of a lot of different things. And I think they do present some very unsettling scenes, some scenes that you want to instantly get out of as soon as they're presented to you. But I think that's the charm of the film, in a sense, where it's like, can I watch The Uncle every day? No. Can I watch it every week? Certainly not. It's one of those films that I think you can turn on every once a year maybe, and kind of sit with it. And I see Dylan making faces over there, but I think these films you need in your library, in a sense, because there's so many directors out there that don't know how to portray this type of film and to kind of present these stakes here for an audience to sit with and reflect upon, because there is this viciousness that does live in the real world, and maybe not to this extent like what we're seeing the situation here. But again, it's easy to lose yourself in a film like Barbarian. And while that's a good film, it's not overly realistic in sense of presenting people like that. So I think for me, that's why I think The Uncle gets a high mark for me.
Absolutely. And again, like I want to say, it's like this is, by all standards, is getting a positive review from me. It is one of those things where it's like, again, if you are into these kind of movies, it's like, and normally I am like, I appreciate like the works of like Yorgos Lanthimos and stuff like that a lot. And I think that maybe there's just a little bit more of elements of humor to his work that just weren't in this. I feel like this was very humorless, and it might have, with a little bit more levity in certain scenes. Like there were some bits that were funny, but they weren't like necessarily. I don't know if that was the intention, especially because like the first time you hear a certain phrase or a certain set of dialogue, it is very shocking. It is very funny, but you realize as the film goes on that it's like, oh Jesus Christ, like this is the situation that these people are in. It's torturous. It's tough to sit through. It is a hard watch, and you need to. I just want to say you need to be ready to sit down and watch something like this. I think to before you go on this journey. And I think Luke is absolutely correct. We need movies like this. We need horror films like this, psychological thrillers like this, because they do really set themselves apart. They do break the mold, and they do set us into basically a spot where we can kind of just say, hey, like you have to be ready for this. Like you have to be willing to take this journey and walk that path. And I did, and I walked out feeling, I think, exactly what the filmmakers wanted me to feel: unsettled, a lot of questions. But overall, I can appreciate it. I can appreciate the art, but it's just one of those things for me. I will not be sitting down and watching this film once a year. I will probably go back to this at some point down the road, but I really know that I need to be in that mood. This to me, if I had to put it on anything else, it's like a lot of Lars von Trier's work, which this is again more subtle, but it's kind of a rough comparison again, where I just say like some of his stuff, like Antichrist and stuff, I only watch I watch it sparingly. I watch it every few years. I get the urge to watch it, and I probably will for this, because there is a lot of, again, wonderful performances. It's shot beautifully. The concept in and of itself is very intriguing. It's just a tough watch. And I think a better comparison maybe would have been to last year's Speak No Evil. If you saw that, Luke, you're like, yeah, this was one of those where it's like you are just so unsettled. You want to shake these people and be like, listen, just do this and everything will be fine. Because there's so many moments in this where they could do something and they don't, and you're just like, why? Why? It's so tough.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, especially when you're gonna watch these foreign films. I think, you know, more often than not, they do have a knack of you mentioned Speak No Evil, and um, they do have a knack for kind of reaching these psychological aspects that I think sometimes American films do miss that mark. And I again, looking at the premise here, and again, we have to kind of tiptoe around the actual premise. I think it's a very intriguing premise. Remind me a lot of Funny Games, if you've seen that film.
Yes. Yep.
I think that kind of
Another good
element.
comparison.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of be prepared. Going into that, you can kind of understand what you might be in for. I think there is um, a lot of interesting dynamics at play here. It really does a deep dive in the psychological aspect. One of the things that I thought was a little weird that didn't really work for me was there was a synth kind of score. A lot of a
Oddly,
few
that
times.
was one of the more comforting parts to this film for me
For me, it was just
because
out of place.
when that would come on, I just got the sense of that kind of 80s style, like the guest style kind of filmmaking that I love. You're
Yeah.
absolutely correct, though, for the kind of movie that this is. I don't necessarily know if it worked. I was hoping that it was going to guide us into a little bit more of a twist to that kind of thing, where this would go more slasher than, I guess, raw psychological. But no, we stayed very raw and very psychological, and we hit it. We hit the nail on the head in the end, and it was yeah, definitely an effective watch. Probably one of the more unsettling and effective films that I'm gonna walk out of Fantastic Fest 2023 saying that I got to see. So yeah, rough.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one of the things I was getting at was, the awkwardness of that synth score. And I think where another instance this film excelled was the kind of awkwardness of some of the silence and just room noise that they did use. Because you're always left, again, not fully understanding the dynamics because they do breadcrumb you a little bit. And you're always just like, what exactly is going on? So you do feel like a fish out of water while you're watching this. And I think you have to be prepared for that going into it, because it is going to be an uneasy watch. It's going to be something that's probably going to take you into a darker side that you're not really necessarily prepared for, especially if you're going in expecting some sort of slasher or anything like that. That's not what you're getting here with the uncle. But for me, I'm giving this a recommend.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna say I can only recommend this to people who are prepared. So definitely watch this film, watch this review, I should say, and then judge for yourself after everything we've just discussed here. And then I would say if you think you're ready to take this dive, go for it. There's a guy on YouTube here called Spooky Rice. He covers these kind of messed up horror films and things like that have a lot of these darker concepts that are more psychological than messed up. Like he'll go into the gross stuff, but he definitely covers a lot of this very much feels like something that he's going to be talking about in a few years. So but alrighty, guys, that's going to wrap us up here for our review of The Uncle. Let us know if you got to check this one out at Fantastic Fest, or if this is way later and you just saw it, and if you think that I'm just a big baby and Luke hit the nail on the head with this one, or if you're more on my side, where yeah, you were left feeling a bit unsettled. Yeah, other than that, we got a lot more stuff coming out of Fantastic Fest, some more reviews to look forward to, and of course, way more stuff coming on the channel as we go along here, including but not limited to our sponsorship with Full Moon Features, where you can check out the Tiny Terrors. Yes, we have a link down in the description. Go ahead and drop your email in there, and you'll get constant updates on when and where you can purchase these bad boys. So definitely stick with us here. More reviews to come. And yeah, it's going to wrap us up. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.